I met Haiping from NUS, actually, 12 years ago now. Funny because we actually started our first entrepreneurial venture together. If you remember, when in the first class I shared about, did I share about dim sum on NUS? I started this dim sum thing, which failed anyway, but this dim sum thing at NUS, and he was my partner in crime. So we used to be at Yusof Hall. Shears Hall. No, but we had our kitchen in Yusof Hall. Our kitchen in Yusof Hall. And we were just playing with dim sum and cooking stuff and delivering around campus. So that was where we met and where we first started. Ever since then, I went mostly to branch into consulting and some side ventures of my own. But Haiping has always been in the VC space, right? I think when he first started out, leave more for him to elaborate himself. But I think each time when I speak with him, he was first in the healthcare space. And then there were a couple of portfolio companies that died, but some that also went quite successful. I think recently some of them were listed. And now, most recently, he's the senior VP of Cambridge, right? Which is another space altogether, linking high net worth individuals with VCs.
Correct.
Right? I think I leave you more to talk about your recent adventures, and then really to open the floor for you to quiz him on anything. All right? All right, Haiping.
Happy to see all of you here today. So like Waki said, I was from NUS. I actually studied in NUS as an engineer. So I was from material science and engineering. But I've always been very interested in venture capital. So one day, me and Waki was chilling in hall, and he was saying, why don't we take this thing called CFA? And I felt that, what is CFA? It sounds very interesting. So as an engineer, I was like, how hard can that be, right? So I'm like, okay, I think there were 5 of us that took it. Luckily, both me and Waki passed, whereas the other 3 didn't make it. We take another time. So that was my first foray into finance. At about the same time, I also worked for an investment bank doing clean energy. So I had a little bit of both technical skill set and a finance skill set. And at the 4th year of my NUS, I went to work for NUS ILO. So it's the industry license office trying to sell patents to companies. So before I graduated, I already had a good mix of sell side, technical evaluation, investment analysis, so on and so forth. So after I graduated, I came to work at this firm called Cambridge Accelerator. It started off as an incubator, so we weren't a VC fund yet. And it was very typical of the state of VC at that point of time, because the VC industry 6 years ago wasn't as mature. Since then, I have Cambridge Accelerator has went for IPO, and I'm now running one of our portfolio companies called Cambridge, where we basically operate a private market linking and helping VCs find syndicate investment alongside other co-investors, and then helping them exit. So I'm more or less still in the VC ecosystem, just doing it in a more higher and a scalable fashion. So I'll start with really breaking down what are the 4 stages of a VC fund, giving a brief overview, and I'll go a little bit deeper into each stage, and I'll open the floor for questions. So in terms of the VC life cycle, right, there are actually 4 main stages, right? So the first stage is really how do you raise money for the VC fund. So don't forget, VC funds are entities which we also need to raise money for ourselves. The second stage is mainly about how do you aim to deploy capital. So after you have the money, where do you deploy the capital? How do you analyze whether this entity or this investment is a good opportunity or not? The third stage is really operationalizing it, and how do you grow your portfolio companies? And the last stage is how do you exit your investments. So I was pretty fortunate. Within my 6 years at Cambridge, I managed to go through all 4 stages. So currently, after 6 of our entities we invested, 4 of them died. 2 of them we managed to go through an M&A process where it's now listed on the Catalyst Stock Exchange. So far the returns have been pretty good. So we have delivered quite good returns for investors. So moving back to the stage 1. So stage 1 is where we created, or we first formed the fund. So what happened was that in 2010, where we started the fund, it was a great time to be in the VC industry because the government was very supportive in promoting what they call deep tech. So in terms of the fund strategy, me and my boss actually chose to go into healthcare. Even though none of us know what the hell is healthcare is, we basically learned along the way. The government was issuing out proposals, so we had to contest with various other incubation firms on what is really a good incubation firm processes and so on and so forth. And it was a great scheme because it actually allowed us to leverage 1 to 5 times, which means that if we put in $1, the government would sort of like loan us $5 on like a interest rate of like 5%. So it was a really great deal. So that's what we did first. With that, we then managed to convince a whole suite of family officers and ultra high net worth individuals to put together our first fund. It was pretty small. It was about 5 to 10-ish million at that point of time. So that's how we got started. If you guys are lucky, if you guys want to enter the VC or PE industry with established funds, then most of the time, established funds normally go for what we call institutional investors, your Temasek, your GIC, so on and so forth. But most of the time, if you're raising your own fund or doing it for the first time, most institutional investors won't even take a look at you. So your options are mainly limited to either family officers and high net worth individuals. And a lot of this is very dependent on where your network is. So I was lucky that my boss had a very strong network within Singapore and Hong Kong. He was actually working for Richard Lee, Lee Kai-sheng's son, for over 10 years in VC. So he had a very strong network, and we managed to have many other VCs also provide us support and do so. So even though if you are thinking of going this industry, networking with LPs, IIs, family officers is very, very important. That's how you are able to get leads, how you're able to convert them into actual LPs. The process itself it's tiring, but it's repetitive. So basically you start with thinking, okay, I need 2 to 3 million from 3 to 4 individuals. So you basically say, okay, I need to reach out to 30 or 40 family officers and LPs and so on and so forth. And you basically have to convey to them that, you know, this is a good opportunity, this is my investment thesis, I believe this will work. It's basically just making promises, you have no idea whether you can deliver them or not. That's how it is. I mean, as a first-time fund, that's basically from my point of view. So we were pretty lucky. We were one of the very first incubators that won the government, the 1 to 5 scheme. We were also the only ones that won another government scheme that was providing us 40 million on a one-on-one basis. So we managed to grow our fund from there. And we actually purposefully still maintain ourselves in the healthcare space because it was considered very hot. The government at the point of time was trying to promote healthcare, and they needed a lot of the poster childs in healthcare. So we managed to ride on the wave of fundraising. So fundraising for us was relatively straightforward because our strategy was to get government endorsement and then reach out to family officers and high net worth individuals. Now, since we have some track record, we are also talking and have some money from very large listcos and also institutional investors. But at the start, it's really challenging to go to them at first. So right now you have money, right? You have 10 million, you have 80 million, you have 100 million AUM, right? So what do? You move on to the second phase where you start deploying capital. And this is the phase where I personally find is the most boring because all you do is that you go to as many events as you can, you go to all the conferences, you go to NUS, NTU, you go and speak to all these professors, and you have to sit through all these very long, tedious presentations about how an entrepreneur is going to make you 10 times your money. I think this phase is more or less rinse and repeat, where you really have to understand from an entrepreneur where his or her strengths lie and whether you invest in him or not. But at the end of the day, this part of the process where you're deploying capital it's really important for you to have a good sense of whether you can work with the entrepreneur or not. For us, because we tend to lead all our investments, we tend to take majority stake in our companies. We have a simple test, right? Am I able to sit with this entrepreneur on a plane ride, let's say on a 10 hours plane ride? If we are not able to do that, we probably won't invest in that company. So for us, when everything else is ticked, for example, the technology is sound, there are patents, there's a pathway to, for in our case, healthcare, FDA or CE mark, there's ability for us to disrupt the current status quo. On top of all that, if the people that we are investing alongside with and working with, we can't see eye to eye with them, we normally don't make the investment. So I know it's very cliche, but management team is the most important, but it's more like whether you can work with the management team or not. That's really very key, and probably more so in Asian cultures. So after deployment, it's where we start to grow the company, and that's where the fun part is, because it's very rare for someone at our age, in our role, to be able to hire and fire CEOs on a monthly basis, but that's basically what we had to do. We had over 10 companies, and we basically had to hire, for the deals that we led, the entire team. So we have a professor that promised us the technology will work, blah, blah, blah. So we then had to hire the CEO, the project manager, the technical lead, the regulatory officer, and so on and so forth. That's also where we can benefit from economies of scale. So we used to have specialists who are a specialist in accountant or in HR or in PR. We have a specialist who is a specialist in FDA clearances, CE mark. So we just pick it up and parachute him in company A, B, C, D, E. That's really how we run our operation. So it's more like a mini club of companies, right? And then basically we had to do a lot of KPI tracking. So for us, we tend to be very hands-on. There are many VCs who tend to be co-investors. They tend to just invest, and maybe once a board meeting come in and check what's happening. For us, we literally are the ones that set the KPI, set the milestone, set how much money is needed to meet this milestone. And if we don't hit that milestone, we had to fire and hire the whole team again. So it was really, I would say, very eye-opener for me to learn how to be a manager at such a young age, and to learn how to manage different dynamics, team dynamics, and to also expose myself to different companies at one point of time. So a typical day for me would be, I could be doing a fundraising for company A, I could be evaluating the research plan for company B before lunch. After lunch, I could be helping my fund raise money, and maybe evening I could be being a part of a health project for company D. So that was really fun times lah. So that's why I think, even though the VC job may not be the most highest paid, it's quite well paid, but not the most highest paid in finance. It's still pretty fun because you get to enjoy all these things. The last stage is really the exit. So in terms of all our companies, we had one that was licensed out, two which we combined, merged and listed, and the other 4 companies failed. So it's just a matter of having the right processes to exit a company. So for us, as a core principle, before we invest in a company, we tend to look at the exit first, but it's never always that way. So it's always about trying to maneuver and figure out what's the right market timing if you want to IPO, and having a constant dialogue with your potential M&A acquirers. So basically there's 4 stages of sort of like a VC fund life cycle. And what you do at each stage really depends on which stage are you at. So obviously in the early days, I was more focused on fundraising, deployment. After we deployed, then it's operations and growing. And the last 1.5 years, we're just focusing on IPOing. So that's like a rough overview about the VC fund cycle from my point of view at least. Yeah. Happy to answer any questions.
I think it's very close to what we learned and what we discussed as well, right? Because if you think about like how Haiping started out, the fundraising part, there are the listed companies and then angel investors and institutional investors. Like the whole scheme, the whole spectrum rather, is quite wide. And depending on the size of fund and the profile, and if it's a first-timer fund, Like it's going to be very challenging just reaching out to your institution, right? Then we talked about the ratio of failures, right? Like in some sense, it's quite similar, right? Out of 6, 2 survive. It's similar to our 2/3, 1/3. Actually, it is the 2/3, 1/3 ratio that we talked about as well. Yeah, and the typical day at work, it's really very diversified depending on what you're focused on. Right?
Yeah, seriously, when I go to work in the morning, my timetable is like, do this, do this. It's never like that. Like when I go to work, every time I go to work, I end up doing things which wasn't on my timetable at all. Yeah, so.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I guess that just means that there are a lot of fires to fight, right?
Yes,
Because you're managing portfolio companies, and especially in your role, it's less a passive investor, more like you really the lead. Okay. Khan, yes.
Yeah. Do you think working in a VC is still very finance related? I mean, you probably still look at some KPIs, but if you invest in a startup, they might even not have any, right?
So, we took CFA, and I was doing hardcore modeling in my investment bank. Like, I applied, besides the plus minus sign, the time sign, that's about it. So I mean, in the most I would say financing thing was probably the cap table and ESOPs. So the cap table, you have all these plus minus, and ESOPs you kick in at different variation, and then you calculate liquidation preferences, which is basically you model the exits, but it's all purely academic. So and I know this for a fact because we've also invested with the likes of BioVida, Vertex, Temasek. No financial model has ever met the goal, right? I mean, it's VC, right? So we use financial models for a lot of KPI, like you mentioned. So it's really very operational as opposed to coming to for the purpose of financial modeling. So it's like, okay, we need to earn 10 million revenue by this date, and we need to have, before that, we need to have, let's say, 8,000 subscribers, right, to our plan or whatever. And then if the number don't hit right, it's really very operational. So if you call the CEO can't fix it. We call the CMO or whoever's underneath him, can't fix it. Then we fire him and hire a new one. So that's probably it. Yeah. The modeling is not much, I would say. There's no scenario analysis. There's no, interest rate or whatever. I mean, everything is pure equity. It's more very simple cap table and ESOPs, Yeah.
I think it's very close to what we discussed, right? The model will always be wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it's about using those assumptions as markers for operational fixes that you need to figure out, right? But it sounds like it's more startup world and entrepreneurial world in the VC space than a finance or banking type of role.
Yeah, I mean, banking, if your budget is 5% off, you throw a fit already, right? In the VC world, if your budget is within 15%, really have a champagne and you start celebrating, man. It's really, I mean, who knows? So a typical budget, okay, this year I'm going to spend 1.5 million in technology. Okay, fine. I mean, it's just someone like having their finger and say, okay, 1.5 million, fine. And then we go through the regulations, we go to customer and say, oh, we need HIPAA, or oh, we need to fulfill this guideline, oh, we need that, oh, we need to change the stack. Then 1.5 million becomes 5 million. But who would know such things in the beginning, right? So it's really about having the ability to quickly iterate. So like you said, assumptions, testing it, and then just making a decision and go. So there's this guy called the Amazon guy, right?
Jeff.
Yeah. So he has this thought process, right? You have type 1 and type 2 decisions, right? I don't know if you teach that.
No, I didn't teach that.
Anyway, type 1 is like, you know what the hell's going on, so you can't reverse, right? So you have to be very thoughtful about making them. Like in a startup, right, everything is type 2. Everything can be reversed, everything can be changed. We have this business model on Monday with a different business model on Friday. That's it. Everything is type 2, there's no type 1. So by the way, type 2 means if the decision can be reversed and changed, don't think, just do. That's about it. Yeah.
Thanks for holding back. Other questions?
How do you generally spend for each stage of the VC life? Like how much time and everything?
So within our 6 years, we spent about half a year fundraising, and we spent about 3/4 of a year preparing for exit, Then everything in between the 5-year-ish is about deployment and growing. So it depends on the company. So we had like 2 batches. So like in our first batch, we just invested in 4 companies in like 3 months. We learned from there. Then our second batch was more careful. I mean, we don't know why, so we're just trying it out. And we were actually took some learnings we had from the first batch. So, but I think in terms of, in general, different VC funds have different strategies. So like if you think of like a VC fund like fund startups or something similar where they don't lead their investments, they tend to say, okay, let's say they have $20 million AUM, then they deploy 500K, they basically will, not be the lead investor, they'll not sit on the board, they tend to deploy all the time, and they literally or very rarely spend time in really growing the company or hiring up. That said, they do have very strong ecosystem. So one thing to note is that right now the VC world in Asia is much more competitive. So it used to be that if you are rich, you know someone, you could be a VC. Now it's more competitive in the sense that we are maturing. So the VCs in Asia really know that building a brand, an ecosystem is very key. You see them giving more talks. You see them having demo days. You see them having CEO days. So they're building a brand, and they know that this brand is key because we call it a mind share. So the higher you up in terms of mind share, the more business plans you will receive, the more successful you will be as a VC. It's all about that. For us, we were lucky. We didn't want to compete in the tech space. So if you think about tech, right, and then you're like, oh, there's like 500 VC funds. There's like front-end startups. There's like Golden Gate. There's like Vickers, and no way we could be one of the top 3 or top 4 funds every successful entrepreneur thought about. So what we did was, okay, let's do healthcare, which the returns can also be very good. But, oh, you know what? We're the only ones, so you have no choice. If you want to raise money in healthcare, you have to come to us. So that was 5 years ago. Now there's 3 or 4 healthcare funds competing, but luckily we managed to move to a higher level. So, I mean, VC funds are getting more competitive. You do have to build your branding. You do have to build your ecosystem. It's no longer I have money, tell me everything. It's more like I'm a VC, this is my ecosystem. I have growth hackers, I have reg guys, I have marketing guys, I have this whole list of CEOs that will give me positive review. So please let me invest in you. It's especially competitive for tech. So like a tech deal like Grab or whoever, it's like you have VCs climbing over each other to invest in that deal. So it depends on the dynamics, but it's always a cycle. There will always be cycles where money is chasing after deals, and there's always a cycle where deals are chasing after money. So it depends on where you are in the whole dynamic.
With that loan from the government for every $5 that you put in, they put $5
Yeah.
in, was that because you specifically chose to go into investing in the healthcare?
Correct, yeah. So
is the government incentivizing a lot of VCs now to move into the healthcare industry?
So the government was instrumental, but they also were very aware that they can't support this over time. So what happened in the past 20 years ago was that Singapore had this fund of funds. I think it was called Eagle, I think one of those funds that was continually supporting VCs. It ended up making a lot of VCs very rich, but there wasn't many creatives. Creatives was one of the more popular Singapore tech company. So they learned from that. So what they told everyone in the industry was that, okay, this is one time only. You only have this shot. We will help you create an incubation firm. We help you create a VC firm, but that's it. So I think what happened was that they actually reduced the number of funding support, especially for tech, because in tech they saw that there was an over exposure of capital. So in the later years of the scheme, they actually stopped supporting 1 to 5 or 1 to 1 for tech startups. So then some of my peers in the VC industry had to obviously raise more money from the LPs, which wasn't very good. But in all events and in all situations, I still feel that it was needed, because as opposed to US where you have like, third or fourth generation VCs like Tim Draper, they know their shit inside out. Like the VCs here have like no clue, right? What to do, how to do things. So it's more like having the government step in to sort of like kickstart but after that they were hands off already. So that was really a slice in time where we could go in, and then we didn't want to do tech, we did healthcare, and we took things from there.
Do they do that with any other industry now, or are they still supporting?
They are still supporting healthcare, they are still supporting deep tech. And I don't know what the hell deep tech means, but it's basically anything that is not software tech. Like software tech is overexposed. So if you want to do like another e-commerce or like anything blockchain or anything ICO or anything mobile, it's too much money already. So it was really an evolution of the time. So your younger ventures, your Golden Gate, your biggest venture, they actually all raised $200-300 million this year, I think. I think this morning, B Capital, the Eduardo guy, he raised 360. So right now, I think the government is at a point of time where, okay, there's enough money, the VC is set, let's focus on other stuff.
And these are industry specific as well, right?
Correct, yeah.
It's not like for all VCs. You play because like the tech there's overexposure, like the government doesn't need to give in like the free money anymore.
Yeah.
As a VC in the healthcare area, which areas are you industries within healthcare you really?
Yeah. So healthcare is very wide. Yeah. So when we look at healthcare, there's drugs, there's healthcare equipment, there's diagnostics. So what we look at was more on the diagnostics aspect, because when we look at Singapore as an ecosystem, so we were liaising with ASA a lot. We did a lot of studies on what Singapore could be strong at. One of those was that we had a very strong manufacturing base. So one of our company was doing this cancer detection chip that really relied on the processing power and the tolerance of our current manufacturing capabilities. We didn't do drugs because for drugs it's highly binary, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and you needed like $200-300 million to do that, so we didn't do that. And it's also fund life dependent. So if we had started out with $500 million, I would have put $200 million in drugs, but we only had like $100 million or so. So we did mainly diagnostics. We focused a lot on diagnostics that were disruptive to the ecosystem, but leverage on capabilities we could do in Singapore. Because as much as you would like to think that the world is global, you can work with anyone around the world, but sometimes when you're in manufacturing, when you're coding, when you're in development, nothing beats having the engineer or the coder sit right next to you. So another one of our products which we managed to license off was basically a Holter monitor. It like detects your heart and it's like a sticker you paste. So all those were also built in Singapore. So basically for us at a point of time when we evaluated what to do, we thought about what Singapore can or cannot do. So it's more naturalistic and our local ecosystem. And then we thought about how to deploy in capital. We also didn't do healthcare services. That said, we did have an investment in healthcare services deal that we managed to merge and I enlist. I think healthcare services in this part of the world is very popular. Like if you ask any rich boss here whether they want to invest in healthcare drugs, they'll say no. Whether they want to invest in healthcare diagnostics, they'll say what the hell is that? You say, do you want to invest in a hospital? They'll say yes. So that's why part of the portfolio also went into investing into healthcare services. So it's also like, in a way, responding to our LPs and responding to what is our exit plan as to, and it was the healthcare services that managed to capture the retail investors' expectation when we IPO'd the company. So it's more of you want to invest, where is your strength and weaknesses in your local industry and what you can and cannot control, and what allows you to exit to exit your investment. So we knew that we weren't in Singapore. It's like if you are in Boston, by all means invest in drugs because like all the huge drug companies are there, all the M&A scouts are there. I mean, they literally go to events every day, but we didn't have that ability or did that outreach. So we only invested in things which we thought we have a chance of exiting here in Asia.
So I think the market landscape is important, right? But also like your LP profile and preferences are important because they are the ones who pump in the money. But also I would say the size of the fund also matters, right? Because how diversified you can be and how like where you need to pick your bets, things like that. Okay, Moses, you had a question as well?
How to screen the projects in practice?
So the question is, how do you actually screen the projects in practice?
Oh, okay. So I had a DD template, right? It's like more for like the the investment committee, because for proper governance, you had to tick all your boxes. So we say we have stuff like, oh, is there a value proposition? Is the patents being cleared? Patents being filed? Is the technology outstanding? But to be honest, at that stage, right, at that point of time, we were looking at a patent or a product that a professor did. So it's untested. It may not even reach POC, proof of concept level. It may not have been tested in humans yet. Is anyone guess whether it can really reach the end objective? So what we did was that, okay, can this professor make it, right? Is he a top professor? Has he published many papers? So that was why I mentioned earlier, we went to look at the guy instead, right? And more importantly, can we work with him in the future? Because there were many situations where the professor is great, the technology is great, but the guy is just an asshole. And you just can't work with him. You can't hire anyone without him. You can't find anyone without him. Things are not working. You can't kick him out. And you just can't run a company like that. So it's really... And the thing about technology is that there are many possibilities. There's no one solution. It's all about having what you have, which is like a patent, actualizing it, creating the product, and having it compete head-to-head with your existing competitors. Actually, there are many paths to this process. It's like there's no one technology that can rule all. That doesn't work like that. It's more like having the right team and the right focus to reach that destination.
So many paths to success, but also many paths to hell.
Yeah.
Many ways to fail as well. Right? Okay, maybe we have the last question. Moses?
Yeah, there's a question about pivoting from the original business model to startup. So I was just wondering, does this happen very often? And so, were they actually successful when you actually pivoted from the business model? Or do you actually have to actually pivot again or actually retract the original business model?
So it happens more often at the starting. Okay, so let me try and be more specific. So when you push the deal to the IC committee, right, and then you say, okay, this is the business model, right, and you want to be politically correct, so it's like constant for like 3 months, and then for sure it doesn't work out, so you have to pivot, and then you're like, okay, it's 3 months after the IC meeting, so it's not as bad, we don't look so stupid, we start pivoting, and it's probably pivoting once a week or maybe twice a week on small things. But largely, the value proposition or the problem to solve is more or less there. It's roughly how do you address it. Like, we want to detect cancer early, right? It's a big problem. We can do it in 1 way, 2 way, or we have 3 or 4 different methods to do it. So method A failed, never mind. Method B, tolerance is okay. Okay, let's run with that. So we pivoted very quickly. At the end of for 3 to 6 months, when you have sort of like the right pivot, then it becomes more and more constant. So it's like it fluctuates a lot in the early days, less the time you publish to IC. But after that, it's more or less constant until the point of time, everyone's in sync. And that's why for us, it's very challenging to put in SOPs. Because for us, when we run startups, everyone comes to work and what's happening, right? And like, okay, this doesn't work, do that. And you really need someone, like a whiplasher to say, okay, this doesn't work, do that. And we are always working with imperfect information. That's why I go back to the point where it's very key to have a team that will stick around and be a good team to move when things happen. The problem is that number one problem we always face, having alignment between people. This founder wants to do this. He wants his technology to work instead of other technology. He wants it to be done in this way, then it just can't work. Yeah.
All right. Any last burning questions? All right.
How much involvement do you have with your companies that you invest in?
So,
Okay.
Do you spend most
yeah.
of the time with them?
Yeah, for us at Clearbridge, it's quite a huge involvement. So we literally hired and fired and hired the team. So and then we literally, see with them almost weekly. Where's your KPI? Have you done this? Have you done that? If not, let's fix it. Most VCs, especially if they're not the lead VC, they only come on like once or twice. So we also co-invest, right? And those where we co-invest with, we chill, and then we will just query the lead. Hey, lead, what's happening? Why are you not, handling your company? So it depends. So if you're the lead, right, you normally have a responsibility to yourself and your VC friends that you're making things happen. If you're co, you can just sit back and just poke people. Yeah.
Do you provide support in other areas? So like
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned it's very important to build a specialist team. And this team is we call them like the Delta Force, right? So with a specialist in PR, a specialist in rec, a specialist in engineering. And if the problem, we pull it out from company B, throw in company A, 3-4 weeks and pull it out.
I think that economics makes sense as well, right?
Yeah.
Because then you invest in one very highly skilled team, but which is relevant across your portfolio companies.
Yeah, so it's economies of scale lah. And those are the people that like it's a very unpopular thing to say, but actually anyone can do the VC analyst job. It's just networking, right? It's like anyone can do it, but the specialists, those are the true heroes,
Technical
I think.
heroes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Haiping. Thank you.